to do it. There we go. Sorry about that. I hit record to this computer instead, record to cloud instead of record to computer. I like it to go to the computer instead. Anyway, um, our portion this week is Pekudei. Just one second. Paul's coming in. Portion is Pekudei. We're on page 564 in the Eitz Chaim. It's chapter 38, beginning with verse 21 of Exodus. And first, I just want to start off by saying I have to end at about 11:30 because I have a 12 o'clock Board of Rabbis meeting in person to go to. So that doesn't happen too often. And I really would like to attend the Board of Rabbis meeting. And so it just turns out there's not much to say about this portion anyway. But so there are three elements that I want to talk about. And again, we're on page 564. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. So I want to just start by reading the first few verses and then looking at the commentary below the line. Ele Pekudei hamishkan, mishkan ha'idut, asher pukad al pi Moshe, avodat haleviim, biyad Itamar, ben Aharon hakohen. These are the records of the Mishkan, of the tabernacle, which is the tabernacle of, now it says here, the tabernacle of the pact, but Edut is really testimony, the tabernacle of testimony. So it's just an interesting name. So these are the records of the tabernacle of testimony, 564 in the Eitz Chaim, that were recorded by Moses, the work of the Levites under or with the hand of Itamar, the son of Aaron, the Kohen. So a couple things about this. First of all, the Mishkan is called Mishkan Ha'idut, the tabernacle of testimony. It hasn't been called that before. And so the commentators point out that, because I was looking at other sources and preparing for today, the commentators point out that it's a testimony. It's called the tabernacle of testimony to bear witness that God has fully forgiven the people for the sin of the golden calf. And that's why it's called Mishkan Ha'idut, that here at the end of Exodus, God sees all the work that the people put into building the Mishkan. God saw all of what was donated to make the Mishkan, and God has forgiven the people. And the Mishkan itself then becomes that testimony of forgiveness. So that's an interesting idea. But then we also were not told that Itamar, the son of Aaron, the Kohen, had any kind of role in building the Mishkan or in overseeing any of the work. We were told before that it was Moses and Bezalel and Oholiav who were in charge of building the Mishkan. So this also is something that we understand in the book of Numbers, that the sons of Aaron oversee the Levites in different aspects of the job of breaking down the Mishkan when traveling and setting it back up again. So we can understand then Itamar's role here, which hadn't been introduced yet, as related to what's going to come in the book of Numbers. Okay, so The idea that Mishkan Ha'idut, the tabernacle of testimony, that's a new name presented here, and that Itamar, the son of Aaron, the priest, has a particular role, also introduced here, but also related to what's coming in the book of Numbers. 22, Uvitzaleel ben Uri ben Hur, Lamate Yehuda, Asa et kol asher tziva Adonai et Moshe. And Bezalel, the son of Uri, the son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah, did all that God commanded Moses. Like God commanded Moses, Moses passed on the commandment to Bezalel, and Bezalel carried it out. 23, Ve'ito, and with him, Oholiav ben Achisamach lemate Dan, Charash ve'choshev, ve'rokem batechelet uve'argaman, uve'talaat hashani uve'shesh. So with him was Oholiav, the son of Achisamach. Just interesting, Bezalel's genealogy goes to include his grandfather. So Bezalel, son of Uri, son of Hur. But Oholiav is the more usual way of referring to somebody. Oholiav, the son of Achisamach, of the tribe of Dan. He was a carver and designer and embroiderer in blue, purple, and crimson yarns and fine linen. So 24, these are the records. And then it's we have Itamar, Bezalel, Oholiav, what they were in charge of. These are the records. Kol HaZahav, now back to what the records are. 24, Kol HaZahav, Ha'asui LaMalacha, B'chol Melechet HaKodesh, Vayihi Zahav HaTnufa, Teisha Ve'esrim Kikar, Ushvamaot Ushloshim Shekel, B'Shekel HaKodesh. All the gold used for the work, for all the holy work, was the elevation offering of the gold, specifically for use in the Mishkan. 29. It weighed 29 kikar, so it's translated here as 29 talents, however much that is. And it doesn't even tell us below what that is, and 730 shekels of sanctuary shekel. So however much that is, okay. So it's a lot, but I don't know how much a talent is at that time and how much a shekel is at that time. It says here for half shekel in the commentary above the line, Hebrew Becca is mentioned as a weight in Genesis 24. The stem means to split here in half. Several weights from the time of the first temple have been found inscribed in the old Hebrew script with the word Becca, or its abbreviation B. Their average weight is 0.210 ounces, or 6 grams. It's pretty light. Okay, so that's how much gold that's recorded for use in the Mishkan. 25, V'chesef Pekudei Ha'edah Ma'at Kikar, Ve'elef u'shvamaot v'chamisha v'shivim shekel b'shekel ha'kodesh. And silver of those in the community recorded was 100 talents and 1,775 shekels by the holy shekel, or the sanctuary weight. Beka la gulgolet, machatzit hashekel b'shekel hakodesh, lechol ha'over al ha'pekudim, miben esrim shana v'mala, l'shesh me'ot elef u'shloshet alafim v'chamesh me'ot v'chamishim. Half shekel per head, half a shekel at the shekel sanctuary weight for all those entered into the records from age 20 and higher, for 603,550 men. 27. Vayehi ma'at kikar hakesef latzeket et adnei hakodesh ve'et adnei haparochet ma'at adanim lema'at hakikar kikar la'aden. The 100 talents of silver were for casting the sockets of the sanctuary and the sockets for the curtain. 100 sockets to the 100 talents, a talent for a socket. So the half shekels that the people contributed, that the men from age 20 and up contributed, were transformed into these sockets. Ve'et ha'elef u'shva ha'me'ot ve'chamisha ve'shivim asavavim la'amudim ve'tzipa roshehem ve'chishak otam. And of the 1,775 shekels of silver, he made hooks for the posts, overlay for their tops, and bands around them. So this is the records of the gold and the silver, and then it's going to tell us about the copper and what the copper was used for. So this is the beginning of the accounting, and then chapter 39 is going to talk about the textiles and how they were used. So we have a very careful recording, like an accounting of everything that was donated and how it was used. So below the line on 564 has a comment about this accounting. Like, why do we care? Like, why does the Torah need to tell us about the accounting? Can't we just trust that it was done? This is what the people had contributed, and then it got made into the Mishkan. Why do we care about the records of how much of everything was contributed? So below the line, in this parsha, Moses gives a detailed accounting of the expenditures for fashioning the tabernacle and its furnishings. Why did Moses feel obliged to give this detailed account? Some Israelites knew that they would have taken advantage of handling all that gold and silver for their own enrichment. So, in other words, some people, if they were involved in the work, might have hidden like some gold or silver on their body while working. Who's going to notice? It's like the miners in Africa in the diamond mines, how under rigorous inspection they are when they leave the mine at the end of the day, to make sure that nobody's taking any diamonds away with them. Right? So perhaps this is to highlight for the average person who might have questionable morality and ethics, or questionable moral and ethical standards. This is a reminder Moses did the right thing. They suspected Moses of being no better than they were. So those Israelites who might have been tempted would have thought, well, everybody would be tempted, and maybe Moses would be tempted too. So they needed proof that Moses didn't steal anything. Thus, the Midrash emphasizes that leaders of the community must be above any suspicion of personal aggrandizement. The family that prepared the incense for the temple services, for example, would never let their relatives wear perfume, lest some people suspect them of using temple incense for their own benefit. The official who supervised the shekel offering would wear a special garment with no pockets and no long sleeves when he did so that no one would suspect him of pocketing public funds. A person should strive to please people as strenuously as one strives to please God. Okay, so careful accounting, and I'll just say about this, and then we'll go on. Rabbis have and their discretionary funds have been under scrutiny the past decades, And when a local rabbi in our area was accused by his synagogue of mishandling discretionary funds for his son's bar mitzvah, I, at that time, went to the board, at least the president, and said, I'd really like the synagogue to take control of my discretionary fund. Because at that point, the discretionary fund was really a checking account that I and only I had use of. So checks would come in, I would make deposits, and I would write checks for various purposes. So I didn't really, and it was never really audited, and so I didn't want anybody to question my discretionary fund. So the congregation agreed that I could deposit all the funds into the shul account, and it would be administered by the executive director and whoever else oversees the budget. So that's how, that's an example of records and making sure that everything is above board and no one can question anything about use of synagogue funds. Okay, so that's the first thing I wanted to look at. The second thing is just an interesting comment on page 567. With verse 21, we're told about the breastplate and the ephod, which is some kind of tunic or garment that the Kohen wore, that the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, wore. So verse 21 says, on page 567, so the end of the second line there, Vayirkasu et hachoshen mitabotav el tabot ha'ephod biftil techelet liot al cheshev ha'ephod velo yizach hachoshen me'al ha'ephod kasher tziva Adonai et Moshe. The breastpiece was held in place by a cord of blue from its rings to the rings of the ephod, so that the breastpiece rested on the decorated band and did not come loose from the ephod. So just how the breastpiece was connected to the garment itself, nice and tight with this cord of blue, as the Lord had commanded Moses. So okay, so we just know how the breastpiece was connected and that it was nice and tight. But for the commentaries, it's not just a breastplate and it's not just a tunic. They represent something else. So if we look below the line, the breastpiece was the symbol of justice. Thus, it is referred to as the breastpiece of judgment in Exodus 28, Choshen HaMishpat. So just interesting, when Rabbi Joseph Caro, 500 years ago or more, edited Jewish law up until that point into a book. He called the book the Shulchan Aruch, the set table. That is, all the laws that we need to know about how to conduct our lives Jewishly were arranged on this table. That was the metaphor. And the Shulchan Aruch, that opus of Jewish law, was divided into 4 volumes. And one of the volumes is Choshen Mishpat, the breastpiece of judgment. So just using this phrase as a name for one of the 4 volumes of the Code of Jewish Law. So the breastpiece was a symbol of justice, of proper relations between people and their neighbors. The ephod, so the tunic that the Kohen Gadol wore, was a symbol of worship, that is, of proper relationship between people and God. So you have justice. So, in other words, the commandments of Judaism, there are a number of ways to categorize them. One way is to categorize them as the mitzvot that are bein adam la'adam, mitzvot that are for between people and their fellow human beings. And there are mitzvot that are bein adam la'makom, mitzvot that are related to our relationship with God. So like observing Shabbat is a bein adam lamakom, between us and God, and having honest weights and measures in doing business is an example of a law between a person and their fellow human being. So the Choshen Mishpat, the breastpiece of judgment, is a symbol of the between people and people laws, and the tunic is a symbol of the between people and God laws. So if they're tightly knit together, right, social law and spiritual law together, that teaches when religion is properly understood, justice and worship can never be separated from each other. That it's just as important to see God not just when we light the Shabbos candles, but also when we treat other people honestly in business. So the lighting Shabbos candles is an opportunity to encounter God, and treating people with respect is an opportunity for encountering God. And we have to understand, so the Kohen Gadol's outfit is a symbol of the mitzvot of Judaism, and that the Kohen Gadol, even though he's serving the function for the worship part of the service, also understands, the people of Israel understand from looking at what he's wearing, that it's not just worship service that is incumbent upon us to express our commitment to the covenant, but it's also the laws that guide our behavior towards our fellow human beings that are as important as the worship service too. So being an honest, good person is as important as bringing the sacrifices. And then you can make the argument, if you bring the if you're just a good person and don't believe in God and don't worship, that's not enough. And if you only bring the offerings and are an awful person, that's not enough. The two have to go hand in hand. We have to be good towards God and good towards our fellow human beings. And then there's the last few verses of the portion, which then also conclude the book of Exodus. And there's an interesting comment, also a theological comment below the line on page 571. So if we just start there where it says maftir in the margin, which is like the end of verse 33, Vayachal, so the bottom of 571, Vayachal Moshe et hamlacha. Moses concluded the work. Vayachas he'anan et ohel moed, uchavod Adonai malei et hamishkan. The cloud covered the tent of meeting, and the glory of God, or the presence of God, filled the tabernacle, filled the Mishkan. Okay, so there was a cloud and there was a presence of God that hovered over now and filled the tent of meeting and the Mishkan. 35, Velo yachol Moshe lavo el ohel moed ki shachan alav he'anan uchvod Adonai malei et hamishkan. And Moses was not able to enter the tent of meeting because the cloud was dwelling on it, and the presence of God filled the Mishkan. Uvehe'alot ha'anan me'al hamishkan yis'u b'nei Yisrael b'chol ma'asehem. And when the cloud rose up from over the Mishkan, and then the people of Israel could travel their travels. And that will be reiterated in the book of Numbers. Ve'im lo ye'aleh ha'anan ve'lo yisu ad yom ha'aloto. And if the cloud is not lifted, then they don't travel until it lifts. Ki anan Adonai al hamishkan yomam ve'esh tihiyeh laila bo le'enei kol beit Yisrael b'chol ma'asehem. Because the cloud of God over the Mishkan would be there during the day, and fire would be there at night, before the eyes of, or in the sight of all the house of Israel whenever they traveled. Okay, a cloud by day, fire by night over the Mishkan, a beautiful sight. So if we look below the line on page 571, at this point, there are two embodiments of holiness in the Israelite camp: the tent of meeting and the tabernacle We can think of them as representing a theology of encounter and a theology of presence. So in other words, you have the cloud hovering above the tent, and you have the presence of God filling inside the Mishkan. So they are, according to this commentary, a theology of encounter and a theology of presence. There are moments like a wedding, a birth of a child, an escape from danger, when God erupts into our lives with a special intensity that transforms us, but that is too intense to be lived constantly. Then there are times when God is a constant presence in our lives, like marriage, parenthood, years of good health, in an equally real but less intense manner. The challenge is to recognize God's constant presence in our lives without it's becoming so ordinary that we take it for granted. After all of this dedicated effort, taking up 4.5 portions of the book of Exodus, God comes down and approves of the work. The book of Exodus ends on that note. Our book, which began in darkness, the darkness of Egyptian slavery, concludes in the brilliant illumination of God's glory before the eyes of the entire house of Israel. Okay, so just that interesting theological note about how we encounter God. Sometimes we have an intense experience. Sometimes it's like, God is there, but we have to be reminded of it as this constant presence. And just the idea, it began in darkness and ended in light. So there's a little note there. The asterisk leads on 572 to this note in the Hebrew, small font there without any vowels. So it just means that all the verses of the book of Exodus are 1209, and the middle verse of the book of Exodus is in chapter 22, verse 27. So that's just a very, very brief Masoretic note. In other editions of Chumash, you have longer notes. It'll tell you what the middle letter is and other things like that related to the portion. Okay, so as I said earlier, I wanted to end at about 11:30 because I have this Board of Rabbis meeting to go to. So have a good rest of the day, everybody, and see you next Wednesday.
Thank you.
Take care.